In 1963, American Express, the company in half of America's wallets, was nearly destroyed. Not by a rival, not by a crash, by salad oil, or rather, by tanks of seawater wearing a very thin disguise. Open the file. Anthony Tino de Angelis was a butcher's apprentice from the Bronx who built an empire trading vegetable oil out of Bayonne, New Jersey. By the early 60s, his company handled a huge share of America's exported soybean oil. Banks loved him. Brokers loved him. He was rumpled, generous, and utterly convincing, and almost everything in his tanks was a lie. Here's the entire fraud. In one sentence you learned in school: oil floats on water. Fill a giant storage tank with seawater, pour a few feet of salad oil on top, and when the inspector opens the hatch and lowers his measuring stick, he touches oil. Certified. One tank, full of oil. De Angelis had tanks that were 90-something% ocean. Some tanks were connected by hidden pipes, so the same real oil could be pumped quietly from tank to tank, always arriving just ahead of the inspector. Same oil, counted 5 times. At the peak, paperwork said Bayonne held more soybean oil than official figures showed existed in the entire United States. Nobody checked the country's math against one man's tank farm. Now, the money machine. A respected subsidiary of American Express ran the warehouse and issued receipts certifying the oil was real. In the 1960s, a warehouse receipt with the Amex name on it was as good as cash, so De Angelis took those receipts to banks and brokers and borrowed against them. Roughly $180 million, well over $1 billion in today's money, lent against water. And he didn't just borrow. De Angelis plowed the loans into futures contracts, trying to corner the entire soybean oil market, betting borrowed money on the price of the very thing he was pretending to own. If prices rose, he'd be legitimate before anyone looked inside a tank. Prices didn't rise. In November 1963, the bet failed, the margin calls arrived, and his company collapsed. Inspectors finally drained the tanks in Bayonne and found what was always there: seawater. 51 companies were caught holding worthless receipts. And then, 3 days after the bankruptcy, President Kennedy was assassinated, and Wall Street's worst week in years swallowed the scandal whole. American Express hadn't stolen anything, but its name was on the receipts, and it chose to stand behind them. The bill ran to tens of millions, and its stock lost roughly half its value. The market treated the company in half of America's wallets as if it might not survive a salad dressing scandal. Here's where this file turns into a second, better-known legend. In Omaha, a 33-year-old investor watched the panic and asked a different question. Did anyone stop using their Amex card this week? He stood behind cash registers and watched people pay. They still trusted the card. The scandal was real, but the business was fine. So Warren Buffett bet heavily on American Express, one of the defining trades of his career. The swindle that nearly killed Amex helped build the most famous fortune in investing. The verdict on this file: paper trust is only as good as the dirtiest tank it's built on. Banks lent millions because a receipt had a good name on it, and the name trusted an inspector, and the inspector trusted a measuring stick. Everyone verified the surface. Nobody drained a tank. De Angelis went to prison, got out, and by the 70s was caught running new schemes. The con man repeats. So does the lesson. The salad oil file closes, but somewhere right now, a warehouse receipt is being written for something nobody has actually seen. If this file surprised you, a like tells us to keep draining tanks. Subscribe. The next file is already on the desk. I'm the Money Files. Case closed.